The recovering educator. It sounds a little unorthodox, doesn't it? I know. But who cares? Why not you? Now, when you look at the word recover by itself, what does that mean? Return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. Educator, one who provides instruction or teaches. Now, when you experience burnout, you need to find a solution quickly to prevent from having some type of anxiety attack. It's bound to happen. Now, my guest, Dr. Naomi Hall, is no stranger to challenges of balancing personal boundaries with professional demands. From her own battle with chronic illness and burnout in her profession as an educator and administrator in the education industry, her profound experiences helping others to find support and purpose within their work, Naomi shares her knowledge, faith in God, and tips to help manage those pesky negative voices that come in our heads sometimes. Let's get into this conversation. Why not you? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on another episode of Why Not You. I am your host, Derek Wells, also known as D Wells, and I am joined today by Miss Dr. Naomi Hall. Oh my gosh, so check it out, ladies and gentlemen. The recovering educator helping educators thrive. Now, this just didn't come out of nowhere. She has a story behind this, and so we're going to get into it. And so I just want to welcome Dr. Naomi Hall to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we get started, I just want to start off with a quote, and just let me know how this quote actually resonates with you and how it can actually impact other people's lives. Mm-hmm. So burnout is due to a lack of respect for your personal boundaries.
I love that because so much of burnout is related to your boundaries and not setting them, not sharing them, and not saying no.
And just with you saying not saying no, I heard someone mention, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember who it was, and they said if it's not a definite yes or like a heck yeah yes where I'm excited, it's a no.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If it's not a heck yes, it's a heck no. Yeah. And similar to that, I've heard say no so that you can say your best yes. Yeah. And so it's not saying no just to say no. It's so that we can say yes to the best things.
Yeah. And I know that could be hard for people. I mean, because you have so many people pleasers out there and they just want to do so much for everybody and try to impress people for whatever reason. And I know that could definitely allude to some type of burnout.
Yeah. And I'm learning I'm more of a people pleaser than I realized, but also in that people aren't thinking about you as much as you think they are.
Yeah.
Like we want to please people and we're worried what people will think about us, but at the same time, they're not thinking about us. They're thinking the same thing. What's everybody else thinking about me?
That is so true.
Yeah.
So do you think a lot of times we just have these self-limiting beliefs that we impose on ourselves? I mean, maybe it's like associated with just worry and like looking our best and presenting this image, but we're not really being authentic to who we really are.
Yeah, I think so. Some of it is people pleasing. Some of it is just there's so much image in our culture, and we see other people because of social media. We're looking at so much all the time. We're judging all the time. We're comparing all the time. And so we're trying to live up to these curated images of people and things and expectations that aren't real. And I try really hard to be very real in my social media and my presence of like anybody that goes on my social media, you see me showing up in the morning after my workout, sweaty, no makeup, in my workout clothes, like this is who I am. Right. And I think it's important that we show up that way in our authenticity and who we are.
Yeah.
And when we don't, it's usually because we're concerned about what other people are going to think. We're concerned about living up to some sort of expectation that I have to have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
My house has to look perfect. And I've talked about this in my social media of like, listen, like, don't get any false ideas about me. Like my sink is full of dirty dishes. There are dog toys strewn across the carpet. My microwave needs to be cleaned out. It's disgusting. I actually just did clean it because it was disgusting. But like I'm very real. Like
Yeah.
I have right now I have clean laundry sitting on my bed that needs to be put away. Like it's important for us to remember like nobody's perfect, and there is no perfect life to live. Like we have this one life and we need
Yeah.
to be who we are, who we've been called to be, living in our purpose and not trying to live up to anybody else's expectations. Like there are people that we want to be proud of us,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they want us to be who we are and who we've been called to be.
That's right. Whew. And I know your journey has not been the smoothest or the easiest, right?
No, not at
so how'd
all.
you so how'd you get to this place where you actually, where you actually became a consultant and um, just working with other educators?
Yeah, so it's a very bumpy journey that I took and a long one. So my background is education. I am by training a teacher, educator, administrator. So I worked in education directly for 18 years. And I went right into teaching out of college. That's what I studied. That's what I intended to go into. I had no intention of becoming a business owner. I really thought education was it for me.
Yeah.
And in my first 10 years, first nine actually, I threw myself into my career. Um, it was my dream job that I had. I loved it. I did everything I could. I was at work late. I was there early. I did everything. Like I was
Uh,
teaching in a small Christian school, so I was teaching all kinds of subjects, like five
uh,
different subjects a day. I was coaching, all of this stuff, and then I was laid off.
wow.
And it wasn't really until that point that and I don't know that I would have termed it burnout at that point,
Uh-huh.
but when I was laid off, like that threw me into my first experience with deep darkness
Uh-huh.
of like, this is a dark time. Like, I don't know who I am without teaching.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am without walking down the hallway, rubbing shoulders with teachers and students and working with teenagers, which
Mm,
teenagers are my favorite.
yeah.
I know it's scary to some people. I love it. I love it. Um, and trying to figure out who I was without that. And so that was my first go round
Mm,
and also in the midst of all of this, I dealt with like 15 to 17 years of chronic illness in the midst of all of this. So continuing to show up, even though I felt like garbage and
uh-huh.
was like trying to figure that out. So I'm in this place of like, I don't know who I am without my career because I was working in a Christian school. I was part of the church as well. So like ministry, church work, all kind of blended together. And
Yeah.
I had to figure out, and this is really important because it can happen to so many people in any career of like
Right.
finding your identity in something that can change, like your
Mhm.
job. And when all of a sudden it's gone, you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
like who am I and what do I do? So finding my identity in Christ
Mhm.
as a daughter of Christ and something that never changes, no matter what happens to me career wise, no matter
Mhm.
what happens to the people around me, that is a solid thing that I can put my identity in and it will never change. So whether you're a believer in Christ, in God or not, you've got to find identity in something that does not change. So that was really my first go around with
Yeah.
burnout. Um, and then I left education briefly and went into pharmacy because I was a pharmacy tech for a year
Yeah.
because I was too expensive of a hire at that point, which is kind of funny because I was fired because I was too expensive. Um, and so took that journey out of education to realize I needed to come back. And people spoke into my life of like, you could be an administrator. I was like, wait, what? really?
Yeah.
And so taking that journey of like going back to school, earning my doctorate actually in
Uh-huh.
education, getting back into education, I started out as a science teacher. So love science. And then went into getting my doctorate in educational leadership. I became department head, which meant I got to be like an administrator without the full pay of an administrator and without the full authority of an administrator, but I got to do all the work and teach. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
weird position. Doing that, loving what I was doing, trying to get into administration, and just not getting there. Like nobody like allowing me in. This district I was in would allow me to fill interim positions,
Yeah.
but like nothing more. And like trying to juggle all of that. One of the best things that happened with earning my doctorate was it forced me, like you'll hear this from teachers all the time, like
Uh-huh.
I always have to take work home, like our jobs and our jobs are hard, but like we always have to take work home. No other careers have to do that, which I will state there are other careers that
Right.
do have to take their work home with them, that are doing notes and whatnot. I have a friend who is a PT and she was sitting at home at night doing her
Uh,
uh, notes. So, like, trying to figure out how to earn my doctorate while working full time, while dealing with health issues, I had to figure out how to get my work done at work. And so that really was a blessing there of, all right, I have to do this. And then 2020 happened, and it wasn't 2020 per se. It
uh,
wasn't COVID. Like, that was what it was,
uh-huh.
like it was stressful for all of us. But the fall of 2020, I held like five different interim positions in like 3 weeks. Like the joke was when I walked through the doors, like, what's your title today? And I was
Yeah. Who
like,
are you?
good question. So that was a super stressful time for me, super stressful. Like walking into work and like walking into my office, closing the door and crying just
Yeah.
because of all that was going on. There was toxic environment and stuff. So that leads to burnout. And trying to get a permanent administration position, they weren't letting me. I was being lied about, like all of this stuff going on.
Man.
It was really rough. And my body, when I get stressed, I put on weight like
Do you really?
crazy. Like I think I gained 30 pounds in a matter of months. And I just, at that point, I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like I hated being in pictures. Like I would crop myself out of pictures.
Uh,
Like I hated it. Like nothing in my closet fit. And I had a friend who, so this kind of starts my journey into entrepreneurship. I had a friend who was part of Beachbody
mhm.
who was like, hey, for about a year, I was watching her and I
Yeah.
watched her journey of like having kids, losing weight, having twins, losing weight. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay.
Is
And
she
like
doing
this
something?
community, yeah, this
Yeah.
community that she had. And I was like, And then I hit that point where I was just like, life is so stressful.
Mhm.
I don't like where I'm at. I put on so much weight. I'm uncomfortable. Like all of this, like I was like living in leggings and tunic tops because that was like all that fit. And still dealing with my health, but getting better and improving. And I was like, all right, listen, I am done just surviving. Like this is it. Like I am ready to take back control.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece in like the stress burnout feel is what do you have control of? And I said,
Mhm.
all right, I'm going to take back control of every piece of my health that I can. There are some things I can't control, but
Yeah.
everything that I can, I'm going to take back control. I reached out to my friend. I was like, all right, tell me what you got. I'm ready. And so, like, I jumped on board with her. I, now that I look back, I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe that I started with the program that I started with. Like, it's a little bit
Wow.
crazy, but I did. I jumped in both feet, nutrition,
Mhm.
fitness, mindset and I lost that 30 pounds. And I was like, oh my goodness, I feel so good. Like I was watching what I was putting into my body. I was moving my body. I was already active prior to this, but like nothing was working. Like I'd
Yeah.
tried all the diets, everything.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, all right, something's got to give. And so when I did that, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is what it feels
Yeah.
like have energy. This is what it feels like to feel good and be able to keep up with life. Because I was like at the drowning point of like just barely keeping my nose above water.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is amazing. I have to share this. So, really, my first step into entrepreneurship was I've got to share how good I feel. Like, I need to help other women. There are people out there who need to know keeping your
Mhm.
nose just above water is not as good as it gets. Like, you can make changes, you
Yeah.
can make sustainable changes. I've been with Body 3 years now, I think.
Mhm.
And it's been amazing for me. And so I was like, all right, time for me to become a partner with Body and like start sharing this. And so at that point, I had changed jobs. I was in district administration at this point, which was not necessarily what I wanted, but it was what opened up. And it really was a great change for me. I loved it. And I was like,
Uh,
all right, you can only go so far in
right.
education, finance wise
Right.
and climbing the ladder.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, so my paycheck's only going to go get so big. So let's start developing another stream of income. So that's what I was doing with Body, was developing another stream of income.
Mm.
And I didn't realize when I made that change, here's another piece of burnout. It actually kind of came, well, no, it was with that change into that job as being a district administrator. I knew I did not want to be a superintendent because that was like the next step. And I was like,
Yeah.
nope, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not for me. I know the amount of stress that goes with that. I know what it does to your life, like how consuming it is. Like, you're reachable all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and you're dealing with all that stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want that. And so I was like, huh, what's next? Like, I am
Yeah.
a driven person. Like, I always have my goals. I know what I'm going
Yeah.
after. Like, I was like, all right, get the bachelor's degree, get the job, get the master's degree, earn, like, I eventually went for earning my doctorate, like, rise up,
Uh-huh.
go into administration. And I was like, huh, okay, I don't know what's next. And I'd never been at that point before. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, I have no vision. I have no goals, like, personal career. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And Body opened that door for me of like, oh, like there's this whole new world of possibility for me
Yeah.
I never knew existed. And like I got that vision again and that drive and those
Uh-huh.
goals. And I was like, all right, like this, I know where I can go with this. And I wasn't planning to leave education. But April of that year, I walked into my evaluation, sat down, and the conversation started. So these are always hard conversations to have. So I'm just going to say it. We're not renewing your contract.
Wow.
And I was like,
They made it easy for you.
yeah, they did. They really took like they made the decision for me, really.
Yeah.
I didn't realize at that point, but I was like, 6 months into this job, this is what
Uh-huh.
happens. I've had no reprimands, no issues, no conflicts with anyone. And I'm sitting there like speechless. I'm like, so what do I need to work on? Like, what did I do? Like next go round, like what do
Uh-huh.
I need to fix? And they're like, well, it just comes down to fit. And I was like, what?
What?
So then they're like, so, go ahead. You can take the rest of the afternoon off. Feel free to go home. We know this is, some challenging information. And I was like, so you're just like, I was like, I got work to do. Like, I'm a professional. I'll finish my contract. I'll go back to my office, like shut my door, have my good cry,
Yeah.
and go on with my day. And so, my immediate response is like, all right, what am I going to do? Like, I need to start applying to jobs. I need
Mm-hmm.
to figure this out. My contract is done end of June. That means no paycheck after June. Like, I need to figure this out. And I started applying to jobs and like I was getting nothing, nothing. And like I said, like I have 3 degrees in education.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm highly qualified, highly skilled. I'm getting nothing. And a friend called me and said, listen, Naomi, she knew I had been thinking about starting a business. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And Body had been the step for me to start that. And she said, if you start your own business, we'll support you. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay, I need to take this seriously.
Mm.
And so it really was this progression of like the district letting me go and being like, thanks, but no thanks. We don't need
Right.
you. And the friend reaching out and saying, hey, I'll support you. And I was like, okay, so if I start a business, what's it going to be? Like, there's a lot of things I can do. There's a lot of things I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? Like, I'm going to continue with Body because like that's going to give me some income while I figure this out. And I love it. And I was like, the recovering educator. That's who I am. Like
Yeah.
I have throughout my my career had to recover from like losing my identity, losing myself in my career, burning out, giving myself all out for this job. And we have to remember like our jobs are jobs.
Right.
Like that is what they are. And so I was like, okay, that's who I am. I'm the recovering educator. And right now I'm recovering from it. It was politics was the whole thing there.
Yeah.
Um, it was a money thing. I was expensive. Get rid of me, hire someone cheaper so you can, get whatever. And so I was like, okay, I have fought my way back from burnout multiple times. I have dealt with health issues. I have experienced the extreme stress in education, the politics, like
Yeah.
and it happens in any field. Like the higher you get in different fields, the more you realize like the dark underbelly of politics there.
Uh-huh.
And as a teacher, you're kind of insulated a little bit from it, but the higher up you get, you're like, oh,
Mm.
things are weird and they can get nasty fast.
Yeah.
So that's really what led me to starting this business and helping educators was I had to fight my way back on my own and I had to figure it out and find the resources and the time and the money. And I was like, I can help educators do it faster.
Yeah.
I can help them. I understand what they're up against and what they're dealing with. And so that's really the long story of how I got to what I'm doing today.
Wow. So do you think like just with coming in as a new educator, teacher, I mean, you're all gung-ho excited that you're probably just naive to a lot of stuff that
Mhm.
actually goes on, right?
Yeah,
I could
absolutely.
imagine. So you're putting in all this time and effort, then all of a sudden, what are you talking about? I'm about to get laid off. I'm doing this.
Mhm.
And it's like, why
Yeah.
should and so I, what you're saying right now just kind of speaks volumes because there's so many like people that I know who are they just kind of come to the point, why should I be loyal to you when you aren't loyal to me? And it's
Mhm.
forcing people to kind of disconnect.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say to that, I get that of like kind of the why should I show you respect if you disrespect me, which is has often come up with my students of like that teacher just disrespected me. Why am I going to respect them? I'm like, because it's about you
Mm-hmm.
and it's not about them. Like being respectful, showing loyalty is not about the other person. It's about who I am at my core.
Mm-hmm.
You can disrespect me. I will set boundaries, but I will treat you with respect no matter what, because it's who I am and it's a reflection of me.
Yeah.
And I'll be loyal and faithful in my job because I'm true to my word and I will do what I've said I will do. So I think it's really important to disconnect some
Mm.
of that
Yeah.
and look at I need to be faithful to who I am and to my word. And I will be respectful. I will be polite. I will be faithful to my word because that's a reflection of me. It's not a reflection of who they are and how they've treated me. That's a reflection on them. And
Right.
that's on them. I can't own that piece.
Yeah. That's good. That's so good. Actually, that made me think of this. I wish I could remember it off the top of my head, but it was a man. I was reading something yesterday in Joshua, and it just made me think about. It was near the end of Joshua's life, but he was talking to the people, and basically, it was like a defining moment for the people because he's like, "Listen, you guys need to follow the laws, and you guys need to do this. And if you don't, it's not only going to affect you, but it's going to affect those people that you're associated with. So everybody's
Mhm.
going to have to pay the price because
Yes.
of because of you.
Yeah.
Uh, but it starts with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. The decisions we make don't just affect us, they affect the people around us. Yeah.
So just for like the whole burnout, and I know you shared a little bit about, but when it when it comes to I guess when it gets to a place where you're just like, man, why am I doing this? You're starting
Mhm.
to question if you're doing the right thing. How
Mhm.
does it affect like just you on a whole mental level?
Oh, there's so much that it affects. And one of the things that I see a lot of coming out right now is the quiet quitting part
Uh,
of like, I'm just gonna draw back. And the way we see it in education is,
hmm,
nope, I'm not gonna help during my plan period. No, I'm not gonna take on any other duties. No, I'm not gonna stay past my contract time. And one of the things, so Brendan Burchard is a high performance coach, and I use his app, and I follow a lot of his material, and he talks about quiet quitting, and he's like, you're hurting yourself when you quiet quit because you're no longer taking on a challenge. You're no longer pursuing excellence, and you're just drawing back and withdrawing from everything. And I think there's a difference between setting healthy boundaries and quiet quitting.
Mm.
Setting healthy boundaries, yes, I am full favor of that. Quiet quitting is just this, like, I'm going to step back and I'm going to pull back into my own space and withdraw into myself. And it's not healthy for you. Like, it's not addressing the issues. And that's part of the problem. Like, you're not being assertive for yourself and saying, I need to draw this boundary here.
Yeah.
I need to get my work done during contract hours. That's fine. But you got to get your work done. Like, this is your job, and these are your duties, and these are the things that you need to accomplish. So it can definitely affect you mentally in so many ways. And I talked about it a little bit of like that I'm drowning. Like, I can't keep up. It's this feeling of overwhelm. And like, no matter how much I do, I just can't keep up. And so it's like you get into this hopelessness. I'm the only one that feels this way. There's a lot of isolation of like, I just can't keep doing this. Like, and you're right, you can't.
Yeah.
Things have to change, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to quit your job.
Right.
Like, you've got to figure out how to make it work. And that's part of my goal, is to help teachers be able to stay in this, because it is a calling to be an educator. Like, not everybody is called to this career. Not everybody can stand in front of, a classroom filled with 5-year-olds or a classroom filled with 15-year-olds. And the one called to the 5-year-old is probably not called to the 15-year-olds either. Not everybody's called to this. So when you step away from your calling, like, that's a really hard place to be at, because then you really struggle with like, what am I supposed to be doing? And there are some people, it's time to step out. It's time to leave. I knew for me, it was time to leave the classroom, and I kept getting put back in. And it was not that I wasn't good at it. For me, it was no longer a challenge, and I need a challenge to like propel me. And there are people that, like, if you don't let them continue to be challenged, they will withdraw, they will burn out. And actually, it's a different type of burnout. It's more of a rust out, because you're just like, there's no challenge here. Like, why, what do I like, what do I pursue? What do I go after? What do I do better? And I knew I could always do a little, like, I can get better as a teacher. It wasn't that I couldn't get better, but it just didn't have that challenge that it initially had. And so that's another piece of burnout, that you're like, there's no challenge there. So I would like administrators, anyone who is a leader, like, watch your people and the ones that need a challenge. And if they're not being challenged, watch out. You need to find a challenge for them, or they won't last. They'll be gone. They'll find a challenge somewhere else. And so it was time for me to get out of the classroom. Like, it wasn't a challenge, and I wasn't being allowed out. And so I found a different job, and then they were like, see you later. And so I was like, okay, being in business is a whole different bucket of challenges. And they don't end.
And it's funny that you talked about that just now, because there was when I was, just kind of doing my devotional this morning, I just started writing. The last sentence I actually wrote, it was basically to myself saying, I need to get desperate again. Because you could get to that place where, okay, you've done so many things, or you've done what you've done, or what you're doing so many times, so it actually you get comfortable, and so it. And so now what's the next step, especially like when it comes to like social media stuff, right? Or how are you going to market? What are you going to do to make yourself different? What are you going to do to be a little bit more creative? And so it's like just thinking of something new, but also just stretching yourself. And I think that's when it becomes more real. And now you're actually getting back out of, you're actually getting out of that comfort zone, right? Now you're like operating on faith on a whole nother level again.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you talked about that. Like, this has required faith on a whole different level for me. Because like, having been in education, like, I went straight from college into education. I had a job right out of college. I've always had a paycheck.
Mm.
Like, except for that brief like time that where I was laid off the first time, like I've always had a paycheck. And like I've always known where the next check is coming. And stepping out in business, I'm like, oh, I have to make this happen.
Yeah.
Like me and God, like I am dependent on him in a whole nother level running my own business because I don't have that, yep, paycheck is coming. Yep, the paycheck
Yep.
is coming. It's dependent on my business and how I run it and my marketing and all of that. And so it has grown my faith in such a different way.
Mhm.
And having to like I have verses set on my kitchen island to remind myself. It's those verses in Matthew. It's talking about the lilies of the field, how
Uh,
like not even Solomon in all his glory was clothed like them. How much more do you think God is going to provide for you? And we tend to separate that from, but seek ye first. And that's just a
yeah.
couple of verses later. It's like, but seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, seek first. And I've shifted my day around, my morning routine, so that I am seeking God first in my day before I'm going about the other things. And I'm watching. I literally have in my notes on my phone, I have one on there, God's provision.
Uh,
And every time he provides, I'm like, right there, God's provision. I put the date and what he provided, or the amount of money that he provided, the contract he provided, and tracking God's provision in my life. Because there's also in Psalms,
mm,
David's talking about, I
yeah.
have been young and I'm now old, and I have never seen the righteous forsaken or begging bread. And I was like, okay, David lived his life and he saw that God provides for the righteous. So it definitely has been
Uh,
a stretching of my faith to do this, to be like, all right, God, you called me to this. You're going to provide. You're
yeah.
going to open the doors. You're going to carry me through this. And so, yeah, definitely like it's been important for my faith, a big
Yeah.
step of faith for me.
And I like the fact that you're actually tracking, because how many people don't track, and so
Mhm.
they lose
Yeah.
track of what God actually done for them. And because
Yeah.
I mean, if you are tracking, now you actually have a list of
Mhm.
everything that He's done for you, and you can always go back, because sometimes we just get lost in our current circumstances and we're not
Right.
reminded of what He's actually done for us. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good reminder to be like, okay, what did he do in the past? I have a list.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing it for real. It's been a couple months, I think, that I've been doing it. I was just kind of challenged to do it. And I'm like, wow, this list is getting long. Like it's so cool to look at and just see the different things, the different ways he's providing. And
Yeah.
so it's just been a really cool thing to look at and to do and be like, oh yeah, I need to put that in there. Like
Uh-huh.
that is God's provision for me. Things that like you just at one point kind of just took for granted. Now
Yeah.
I'm looking at it like, oh, that's a blessing. Like that needs
Uh-huh.
to go on that list. That's provision. That needs to go on that list.
Wow. And now just thinking about like everything that you're doing, and I mean, you're helping people um just become more aware of who they are and what they are capable of doing. Do you think that's like one of your gifts or talents, just being able to connect with people and influence them? Or what would you say like one of your gifts or talents is?
Um, I don't know that I ever thought about it as a gift, but I think it's the ability I had to listen
Uh-huh.
and to be present for people. Um, and then be able to look at what they're going through with another perspective. I have a client who came to me this summer. She had to leave her job last year because of burnout
Mm,
and mental health and all of that. And she really wanted to come back this year.
yeah.
So I worked with her and she was able to go back full time this year. And she's still dealing with the stress and the burnout. But to be able to talk with her about, like, she has some of the most challenging students in her classroom that are in that school. And she's not in the most supportive school. Like, a lot of her colleagues on her team are not supportive. And so talking with her and helping her find like find those like our people are really important. So surrounding ourselves with important. So being able to look at that with her and be like, all right, so who is supportive? Who can you surround yourself with? Like you're kind of stuck with these people and they're not fantastic. Like you got to deal with it. But who can you choose to be in your circle? Who can you choose to have lunch with? And these kids, like she goes, they behave differently with me than they do with other teachers. I'm like, that's because you see them.
Yeah.
And you see who they can become, and you are speaking life into these students. And like you're being for them what people weren't for you. And helping her, she was like, oh my goodness, like that changed perspective for her with those students. And when you see that, like I think it's cool to be able to, maybe that's kind of where my gifting lies, of like being able to help you draw that out and be like, listen, like this is what you're doing. Like this is your purpose. This is why they act different with you. Because I had that with kids. Like kids would behave for me, but they didn't behave for anybody else. It was because I saw them and I listened to them, and I listened to the silly stuff, and I got in on the silly stuff with them. And so I had a lot of Hispanic students in my classes, and I don't speak Spanish. I took German in high school. So like, I know a few words, but by context, I can put together kind of what's going on. And I'd be like, I believe you just called her that. And they're like, you know what I said. I was like, well, I understood. Like, so, like making those connections with the kids and be like, hey, so like, cool new shoes. Like, why are you walking like that? Well, miss, like I can't crease my shoes.
I know, right?
And, like, noticing those little, I'm like, it's hilarious to watch them try not to crease their new shoes. Hilarious. I'm like, do you know how funny you look the way you're walking?
Yeah.
And like having those real conversations, those real interactions. Like I used to do it with students. Now I get to do it with adults and be like, look, don't you see the impact you're having?
I know.
Like, look at what you are pouring into these kids and what that means to them. This is why they act different with you.
Wow. You just said it. Just giving them a whole nother perspective on how to look at things. But that's when you think about, that's what Jesus did, right?
Yeah.
He was with the people.
Yeah. And
not the ones who knew everything, but
right.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus hung out with like the people nobody else wanted to hang out with, and he saw their value. He sees our value. And I'm like, that's so cool. Because you're right. He hung out with the publicans, the sinners, the prostitutes, like the people that nobody else wanted in their house. He was sitting down and having dinner with them. And that's something that God's really worked on with me in the last year or two, of like, these are the people that I'm called you to, like your community. Like, it's not about going to church with all the well-dressed people.
Yeah.
Like, there are people out there that need the church, that need Christ to surround them and support them. And one of the things I've gotten involved in my church that has been just such a blessing to me is it's called Family Promise, where I live. And it's an organization that helps families who are housing insecure, who don't have housing. And they work with churches, and the people spend a week staying at a church at a time. So once a quarter, we have people staying in our church who don't have homes, and we're able to provide meals for them and provide a safe place for them to sleep. Like, you think like there are shelters, but think about families going into shelters. It's not always a safe place for them. And this is the place where we're able to wrap around these families and support them and provide for them and show them the love of Christ. Like, this is what it's about. Like, this is what we're called to. Like, not just the people that have it all together. I think that none of us have it all together, but some of us think we do,
Oh,
but
wow.
Reaching those people.
Yep. And so I know, just like what you were just saying, as far as, reaching those people who are experiencing some type of burnout, how do you actually like communicate with them to actually to I guess to get them to open up? Because I know some people can actually be a little apprehensive as far as
Mm-hmm.
sharing what's really going
Mm-hmm.
on the inside. How important is that just to get them to open up and share that?
Yeah, it takes time. It
Mm-hmm.
takes patience. It takes me slow. I can be a very fast-paced person. I'm a
Right.
fast thinker. I'm a
Like,
fast
let's go,
talker
let's
at
go, let's go.
times. I'm like, bam, 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 let's go. But like taking the time one-on-one to like most of my one-on-one clients are virtual and just sitting down and hearing their story
Mm-hmm.
and absorbing it and listening.
Yeah.
Listening for what's not said, but what's
Mm-hmm.
communicated.
Yeah.
And just that communication of you're not alone. Like you are not the only person who goes through this. Like you're not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think oftentimes we get this isolationist feeling of like nobody else is going through this. It's just me. Like no one else feels this way. And so helping people see that you're normal
Yeah.
and you're not broken. There's nothing, like there's not something broken in you. There are
Mm-hmm.
just things that we need to work on to help you set up better systems, to help you change your thinking, to look at like mindset is a huge piece. Like I work through 5 foundations of stress management, and one of them is mindset, and our mind can be our biggest enemy when it comes to how we live our lives, how we think about ourselves. There's so much, we live in a negative culture.
Yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. But yet our mind can be the biggest negative piece in our lives because we're constantly having a conversation with ourselves and talking to ourselves. And so often, I think we have like 50,000 thoughts a day, something like
Right. I was
that.
just thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like 80% of them are negative. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like
Yeah.
that is huge. So if we don't do the battle in our minds,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be able to do the battle in our lives. And so working on that and working on the negativity and the voice that's in your head. And so oftentimes when I speak, I talk about like the first step is just noticing the conversation in your head. And oftentimes there's a specific voice. Sometimes it's our own voice in our heads.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the voice of someone in our past that spoke. I don't know what I want. I want to call it. They spoke death over us.
Yeah.
Like they spoke those words of negativity and
Mm-hmm.
harm and hate and all of that in our lives. And we absorbed that and we absorbed that voice. And so when we look in the mirror, we hear that voice. Or when we make a mistake, we hear that voice. You're so fat. You're so ugly. You're so dumb. You'll never figure it out. Why do you always do that? You always screw everything up. All of that is in our heads. And we have to identify that because that's not God.
Yeah.
Like our heavenly Father does not talk to us that way. Like we are a beautiful creation of our heavenly Father. Like he did not make a mistake when he knit us together in our mother's womb. Yet we speak to ourselves that way. And we would never speak to our kids that way. Like you would not talk to your daughter that way,
Yeah.
right? Like, and if anybody else did, like heaven help them, you know, like we wouldn't accept that for anyone else, but we do it to ourselves. And so we've got to identify that. And I encourage people to put a name on that voice. It may already have a name. You can pick a name. I'm like, listen, you're going to talk to that voice. You're going to be like, listen, Felicia, we're done. We're going a different way. I'm like, bye, Felicia. We're going this way.
Yeah.
Put a name on it and catch that voice, catch it. And it goes back to scripture of like taking our thoughts captive, not letting them run amok in our heads. But
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't want us thinking that way. That's not how he
Right.
created us. That's not how he speaks to us. And we need to catch that and stop it. And so one of the techniques I teach when I speak on this is called scribble and scrap.
Mm-hmm.
You catch that thought, you scribble it on a piece of paper, you crumple it up and you throw it away. And there's a study that shows that that actually helps you move on past that negative thought and move in a more positive direction. So
Wow.
just notice those negative thoughts and catch them, scribble them down and throw them in the garbage because that's where they belong. They belong in the garbage.
That's
Like
right.
God created us as amazing, wonderful creations of his own hand. And what a slap in the face of God to say what he created is dumb,
Mm-hmm.
ugly, not any good. Like when you think about it that way,
Right.
like, oh my goodness, what have I been doing? What have I been saying? Like that puts a whole different perspective on it of
It
like, what am
does.
I saying about God's creation? Because I would never talk to one of my students the
Mm-hmm.
way that I talk to myself.
Yeah.
I've got to change that.
And that's a good way to actually make somebody, think about it and reflect. Because, so many people, they come up with these excuses of why they can't do this or why they can't do that, or I'm this, I'm that. And it totally contradicts what God says. But, I guess now as you're talking about it, you're saying the way maybe it just creates an opportunity for us to, just to remind people of who they really are and the power that's really within them. Because
Yeah,
people are more powerful than they actually think.
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, learning and,
Mhm.
thinking and using somebody else's resources to actually help you overcome. Kind of like how people are using you to actually overcome.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. To like live in joy and purpose
Yeah.
and fulfillment. Like God, God calls us to an abundant life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he didn't just give us life, he gave us life more abundant. And I'm like, that's the life I want to live. And I want to help other people live that and like help them see that living in the burnout, you don't have to live there. Like
Right.
there is a better way. There is hope. There's healing. It takes time.
It
It's not an
does.
overnight thing. It's a battle. Like I still battle the negative thoughts and the negative conversations, but I'm getting a whole lot better at catching it and taking my thoughts captive a
Right.
lot faster. But yeah, God called us to an abundant life. And I'm like, all right, I want to figure out how abundant this life is.
I
Like,
want to figure
what
it
is
out.
there? Like, let's figure it out, folks. Like,
Right.
if God said it, like, let's do it. Like,
Let's
let's
do
figure
it.
it out. Let's not just exist. Like, that's not any fun.
It's not.
That is not any fun. Like, I think we forget, like, we get so caught up in like the words of scripture
Mm-hmm.
that we forget that there's an entire big picture going on. We were talking about it this morning in my Bible study of like there's a bigger picture than just what you read on the page. We were in Exodus talking about when Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh
Uh,
and Aaron dropped his staff and it turned into a snake. I'm like, okay, let's look at the big picture. Like the two of them, Moses is like, Aaron, drop your staff on the ground. And all of a sudden it turns into a snake. Can you imagine being the two? I'm like, oh my goodness, look at what just happened.
yeah.
Like my staff just turned into a snake and it just ate all the other snakes. Like,
Yeah.
mad, like putting yourself in there and being like, oh my goodness. Like, could you imagine if you were the one doing it? You'd be like, dude, look at that. Like, look at what just happened. And so like looking at the bigger picture and like how much real emotion and joy and fulfillment there can be in life. It's not just a do this, don't do that kind of
Right.
life.
No. I think a lot of times, people just, wow, the overwhelming thoughts, they just take you captive. I mean, you mentioned it earlier,
Mhm.
um, just with the thoughts and that taking you captive, and now you're overwhelmed and not really understanding or having a clear method on how am I going to get out of this
Mhm.
mess.
Yeah.
Even though I've experienced one miracle before, it's just the current the circumstances or situations always seem to blind people of what actually happened in the past and the goodness. And man, just being in a place where you can actually have some form of restoration.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that whole thought process is huge. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people actually struggle with it. Just with maintaining like positive thoughts, because like you mentioned earlier, you have so many thoughts just going on in your mind at random times. And I'll never forget a pastor said, um, He said you can have the most wickedest thought while you're actually in church, because
Mm,
sometimes you can just your mind just goes
it
off.
does. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
So wild, so wild.
Yeah.
People have to
Yeah.
get to a place where they find, at least, I'm not sure. Do you, like, just with everything that you've learned and you experienced and this through education, do you think that there is a place where you can actually find balance, or you just have to, I guess, prioritize things in your life that are important, and just kind of go off of that?
Yeah. I mean, there are people that are like, no, there's never balance. It's more of like a blender where you're making a smoothie and you just want to get a good flavor in it. I'm like, oh, it's kind of good description.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it is about like prioritization.
Uh-huh.
And like, oh, I hear so many times because I coach in burnout, but I also am like a fitness coach with body. So
Yeah,
fitness, nutrition, mindset, but they really go together because those
they
are
do.
parts of the foundations of beating burnout.
Hmm.
And I hear so like I don't have time to add one more thing to my plate. I don't have the ability to think about that right now. I don't like I hear the negative. I can't afford that right
Yeah,
now. And I was thinking about this today of like there are some things we can't afford not to do.
right.
And like when you invest in coaching, because I was
Mhm.
talking about this with my own coach last night, like I just paid a good chunk of money
Yeah.
to get coaching myself
Hmm.
in business because I don't have it all figured out. And
Right.
I need someone to sit down and be like, listen, Naomi, like this is what you need to do. Like, forget this stuff. You're getting distracted. Focus on this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an expense, it was an investment in myself. So I think some of it is like changing our mindset about some of that of like the paying the money to get an annual body membership and pay for a supplement every month. It's not an expense, it's an investment in my health.
Right.
Because if I don't take care of my health now, I will be paying for medical bills. And I've paid for
Yeah.
plenty of medical bills in my past. Like I've put
Yeah.
some doctors' kids through college with my health,
Oh, wow.
you know, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can invest now or I can pay later. And
Hmm.
so looking at, like you're saying, we get so caught up in these mindsets
Yeah.
that we need someone else to help us see a different way and
Yeah.
help us see that there is a way out. And I stand here as someone who fought my way out
Yeah.
to help you. Yeah, it is possible. I'm a living example. And have I think I have found a balance. And some of it is that I've just learned to listen better to the
Mm.
indicators of like, Naomi, you're letting stress get to you too much. You need to change some things.
Yeah.
You need to change your thinking. You need to change what you're doing. You need to say no more. You need to look at your boundaries. Like I've learned to listen to the indicators
Hmm.
when they're whispers rather than when they're like full on sirens blaring, lights flashing of like my body's about to shut down. Like
Right.
I've been there, like, the brain fog, the
Like,
fatigue, the exhaustion, the like stress comes out in such physical ways, in actual physical ailments. And I've been there and I don't want to get there again. So I've got to pay attention when my body's like, listen up,
yeah.
something's going on. Like the pain in the shoulders, the migraines. Like for me, I clench my jaw at night. And so I get like lines in my, like on
Do
the
you
inside
really?
of my mouth
Uh-huh.
from like biting down. And then like I get headaches or like, it's different for different people. Some people get palpitations. I actually, this is the weirdest thing for me. I get plantar fasciitis when I'm super, super stressed. I don't have it any other time.
Wow.
So like if my feet start hurting, I'm like, oh no,
You
like
know
it's
it.
time to like reassess and figure this out. So I think you can find balance,
Hmm.
but it's a fine line of like watching those things and paying attention before things are out of balance.
Yeah.
And when you make an investment in yourself, it's that change of mindset of like, when I pay for a coach, I'm not just paying money, I'm investing in
Yeah.
me becoming a better person.
Right.
So make that investment so that you can grow, you can become better. Because so often we're like, all right, I'm done with school, I'm done with degrees, I'm done, but keep making those investments in yourself. Find those things to invest in. If you don't have a lot of money, like find the books, like get
Right.
them from the library. Those personal development books. I can recommend a bunch of books. Get an app like Growth Day. I am loving Growth Day. Like I loved Brendan Burchard before I got his app.
Yeah.
He partnered with our company Body. And so now like we can actually
You get
share his
all,
app
yeah.
with people and be like, here, like this is personal development in one spot. Like that was his goal, is to like bring all of the personal development tools into one place. So you didn't have to go get this and that and the other thing. You
Yeah.
got it all in one app. So like if you can't afford a coach, like go find the books, do the personal development. And that's one of
Hmm.
my things that's I don't know, a bugaboo for me now with education.
You said a
And like
bugaboo.
yeah, I was like, I can't come up with any other word.
Right.
I know it's like an old word. Um, in education, PD is huge, but it's professional development and it's
Uh,
always focused on learning a new curriculum, how to apply the curriculum, how to revise the curriculum, behavior management, classroom management, all of this.
yeah.
And you're doing this professional development for professionals. Teachers, administrators are professionals. They went to school for what they did. They're
That's right.
highly educated people. It wasn't until I went into the network marketing space, actually, with Body,
Uh-huh.
where we were encouraged to do PD as personal development. And I was like, where has then this been my entire career?
Right.
I am now in a network marketing company that tells me you need to be doing personal development. You need to be growing as an individual. I'm like, why isn't this in the field of education?
Yeah.
Why aren't we helping educators? And that's what I do. I do personal development with them.
Yeah.
Why aren't we helping them grow as people, as individuals? Because you are so much more than your career and it all affects each other. Your home stress affects your work stress. Your work
Hmm.
stress affects your home life. It's all connected.
It
So
is.
why aren't we helping educators in this sphere learn to be better people, learn to manage their stress, learn to work on their mindset? And there's a little bit of it with the social emotional learning piece, but that's mostly focused on kids.
Yeah.
Like you got to help your teachers, you got to help your administrators. And so I love the field of personal development, like working on myself to become a better person.
Yeah. And, it's funny that you talked about, being part of a network marketing, because that's where I found, personal development, because they really emphasize, um, they had like a book of the month. And so
Mhm.
everybody was getting like the book of the month that they actually recommended. And so you're actually reading this stuff and you're working on yourself, because you can't grow or help anybody else unless you're growing yourself, right? It
Yeah,
is so
absolutely.
huge. And the whole thing about investing in yourself, because I actually have a coach too, and it's phenomenal, because not only are we talking about things that make you become more self-aware, um, triggers and blind spots, and how to identify these things and what to do when you actually come across one of the
Yeah.
triggers, um, but also like implementing systems that actually
Mhm.
help you carry out your goals, right? Because you have to have a system in place to manifest the goals. Otherwise, it's just a thought, really. You're not going to have
Yeah.
a plan of attack. And
Yep.
so
Yeah. It's
it's,
so, so important.
it is. So just thinking about like the systems and things that you actually have to implement. I mean, are you time blocking, using calendars to track your day, or just to kind of stay in tune to what you actually have going on?
Yeah. The funny thing is, I wasn't aware of time blocking until I was in my business. But the funny thing is, in education, your entire day is time blocked for you.
Oh yeah.
Like it's chunked by
Hmm.
time blocks, literally. And I was like, oh, okay, so this totally makes sense. So yes, I time block. Sunday night, I pull
Yeah.
out my planner and I put in everything that is solid time, that like appointments and things go in, those get highlighted because I'm like, I need to be either on Zoom or in a location. So like that's highlighted so I like don't miss it. And then I start filling in the other things of like what do I need to be working on? What are the things that I need to consistently do for my business so that it moves forward? Where are my coaching appointments for myself? Of like, where am I getting coached? What do I need to show up for? Where are my clients in my calendar? And what do I need to do? So yeah, I am definitely time blocking. It's
Yeah.
amazing. That combined with the Pomodoro technique is like a
Oh
superpower.
yeah. Yep.
And oh, here's my other thing. So time block, use the Pomodoro technique. And then if you're really struggling with focus, when I struggle at the end of the week with my focus. So I front load my week
Mhm.
completely. Like I put as much in Monday to Wednesday as I can because I know Thursday and Friday are a struggle for me. The other thing to add to the Pomodoro is binaural beats for studying. You throw in your earbuds
Yeah.
and it plays two different wavelengths, one in each ear. So that as you listen to it, it actually creates this variation in the sound, a beat. And it's amazing how much that helps with your focus. It's incredible.
And what is that called again?
Binaural beats.
Okay. Binaural beats.
Mhm. There's one on YouTube that I use. It's like a 90-minute binaural beats for study,
Uh-huh.
and it's amazing. I love it.
Okay.
Like it just really helps you with focus.
Wow. I'm
Yeah,
definitely gonna be trying that.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like literally, my dietitian told me about it.
Wow.
Like, yeah, amazing.
So who would you say like are the I guess the people that probably had like the most impact on your life?
Mm. I was thinking about this because when you gave me the question ahead of time, I was like, oh, this is a tough one. I would say number one is my mom.
Yeah.
Uh, my mom has been just a rock throughout my life
Mhm.
and always there, always cheering me on, and always pushing me, not always when I wanted it, but knowing that I was capable of more, she wouldn't accept less.
Yeah.
And I hated it at times in school because she was like, no, go fix it. No, that's not okay. And I'm like, oh my goodness, mom. Like everyone else, she's like, I'm not everyone else's mother. I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, you're not. So there were times I didn't appreciate it, like in school and that. But mom has always been there for me. And even now, like I don't think, I mean, you think about the process we go through to get to where we're on our journey of like
Uh-huh.
for me leaving a solid job to start a business. Um, I think it took a little bit for mom to see that vision. She's on with me now, and it's not that she discouraged me from it. It was just
Yeah.
like, so are you making enough money? Like I'm just, it was that concern for me,
Right.
and now she's like, so like you got clients, like where you going? Like, what's this one? But she's always been there pushing me to be my best,
Yeah.
um, pushing me knowing that I could do more and encouraging me when I was burnt out and I was sitting on the couch sobbing because I was like, Mom, I have so much to do. And I'm crying even harder because I know I'm wasting time crying,
Right.
and she was all right,
Oh
have
man.
your cry.
Uh-huh.
And what's the one thing you can do and go to bed? Like go to bed.
Yeah.
Like I need that. Like I don't function well without sleep. And
Yeah.
that's one of my foundations of stress management is sleep.
Yeah.
So it was like, all right, go to bed, get up early in the morning and take care of it. And mom was the one that introduced me to Christ and made sure that I was at church and I was being fed and I was being faithful, that I was serving and all of that. And I knew. So my mom is in her 70s and she is one of the healthiest, most active women I know in her 70s. And she doesn't look like she's in her 70s. Like my
Uh-huh.
brother and I had talked about this. We're like, mom is amazing. Like she is just always taking care of herself. She is out. I don't know what time it is she goes out now, but when I was in school and high school and college, she was working as a nurse full
Mhm.
time. That was her career. She's a retired nurse. So, she for a while it was just mom and I because my dad had left and I lived with mom and she worked full time, rotating nights, rotating holidays, all of that. She worked
Wow.
hard to provide for me. And I knew that at 5 a.m. my mom was out walking and praying for me. I knew that daily I was being prayed over. So, mom is one of the hugest influences in my life. And just knowing that she's there, She's working hard. She's taking care of herself. Like that's an inspiration to me of like, I want to be like that. I want to
Yeah.
be the woman at 70 who can go sledding with my grandkids,
Yeah.
that can get down on the floor and back up again. Mom like makes rock walls and like amazing. So I was like, you don't have to lift rocks, right,
Right.
Mom? Like, I can help you. And she's like, I
Yeah.
got it. Fine. You know, and so, she's slowed down a little bit, but like still staying
Being
active,
active.
taking care of herself. I'm like, I think it's so important that people realize this is one of those things. So, having dealt with chronic illness, I spent a lot of my adult life sick, in pain, unable to work out and exercise regularly. So, I don't take for granted that, I got up this morning and did a 45-minute workout and lifted weights and, did that. I'm 43 and I'm like, listen, the people who are my age are like, oh, when you hit 40, I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no. Like it really bothers me when people are like, oh, this is as good as it gets. When you turn 50, it all falls apart. And I'm like,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Don't project that
You can
negativity on
live
me. Yeah.
like you can live a different life. You can take care of yourself. You can be the person like on my body team. We have women from their 20s to their 60s who are chasing little children or chasing grandchildren,
Yeah.
and they're working out and fueling their bodies so that they can do that. So that it's not all about weight, it's about the life that you lead
Hmm.
and being able to be present and active and live that abundant life we talked about of like, no. No, we're not talking about like everything falling apart at 30, 40, 50. It's falling apart because what you're putting in your body,
Hmm.
like you are fueling your body with junk, and that's creating inflammation and pain and brain fog. And I had the blessing of fighting chronic Lyme disease and knowing what those things did to my body and
Yeah.
not being able to eat them. No, going, no, I can't have that because I know what it does to me. I
Right.
know what it does to my pain, all of that. I can't have that. I know that that feeds the bacteria that's trying to kill me. And so I learned through that
Mm.
these things. And so like it matters what you put in your body. You can't get up off the couch because you sat down on the couch and you didn't get back up again. Like once you sit on the couch and let it claim you, it will keep you. Like you
Yeah.
have got to invest in yourself in that way of like fitness, nutrition, all of that,
Hmm.
or you will slow down. You will have pain. You will have weight you can't lose. You will have inflammation. Your gut will be a disaster. Your hormones will be a disaster, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. That is huge.
Yeah.
You said that couch, that'll claim you.
Yeah. Just like sucks you in.
So don't, what's funny about that is I remember when I was going through my master's program and um my old pastor, he was like, do not get a comfortable chair to study in. He
Mhm.
said he said get a wooden chair that's gonna keep you up. That way you'll never get comfortable.
Yep.
And that's
Oh
what
my
I
gosh.
ended up doing.
My doctorate, the room I'm sitting in,
Uh-huh.
I earned it on the floor here. Of like, because like I was doing research and writing my dissertation. I'm like, I would sit on the floor with the papers and notes and everything out in front of me and like working on it on the floor because that was the only place I had enough space to like lay everything out at once.
Wow.
So yeah.
So what books are you reading right now? Or
Uh, so I am
yeah.
reading The Language of Breath
Uh-huh.
by Jesse Coomer, which he is fantastic. He is like a breathwork guru. I love breathwork and I use some of it with my clients, but as I'm
Mhm.
reading this book, I'm like, what I know fits in like a thimble compared to what
Yeah.
Jesse teaches in his book. So his book is so well written. It's just so accessible. He gives you practices to do as you read the book and reminds you to go back to certain ones. Like, remember, this is the one you should be doing, and this is how it works.
Yeah.
And I have interviewed him a couple of times and I didn't realize you can breathe wrong. And I was like, for real? And then I'm reading his book and I was like, huh, I breathe wrong, don't I? So like the way you breathe can actually contribute to your stress and anxiety.
Really?
So a lot of us are mouth breathers. And being a mouth breather creates like these shallower breaths from your chest, which is
Uh-huh.
not where we're supposed to be breathing from. which triggers your unconscious mind to be like, oh, we're not safe. We need to be on guard.
Yeah.
Like, watch out. And so, like, just that simple change of mouth breathing to nose breathing can make a huge difference. So his book is fantastic. I am also reading The 14-Day Stress Cure by Mort Orman. And I'm not reading it in 14 days. FYI. But he has a very different view on stress, which is really interesting because he works with stress and anger elimination, not management, but elimination. And a lot of what he's talking about is how we think and the language that we use. So he works with biolinguistics, how our language affects our body and our biology. So that one's been really interesting.
Wow. Before I let you go, like when it comes to everything that you've done, the people that you're influencing, how would you define success at this phase of your life?
Oh, it's always such a good question because there's so many ways we can define success. And so often we look at success as financial.
Yeah.
And if you look at that, I'm not successful right now. And I often look at that because I have huge goals. Huge. And I'm not there. So I can be very down on myself because I haven't achieved the goals. But what I'm learning is goals aren't meant to be achieved. Like if you're setting goals that you can easily achieve, like you need to aim higher, folks.
Right.
Like you need to up the level there. And so I love what Brendan Burchard doesn't talk about smart goals. He talks about dumb goals, like these big, huge goals that people are like, what are you thinking? Like, dude, like tone it down a little. Because that gives us something to strive for. And it's about setting a goal that you need to become somebody else. You need to become a different person. You need to look at that goal and be like, okay, who do I need to become to achieve that? I got to become that person today.
Yeah.
Like I am the person that can achieve that and changing our mindset towards that. And so instead of looking at when I assess myself for success, did I achieve my goal and be like, no, I didn't. I'm a failure. I've had to look back, and I did this at the beginning of this year. I was like, and I'm still working on this of, okay, so I didn't achieve my goals, but what did I achieve? Well, this is kind of cool. Like when I look at numbers, my numbers aren't where I want them to be or need them to be, but my income in my body business from 22 to 23, it went up 2.5 times in a year where most partners lost revenue or just stayed the same. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like I did grow. My recovering educator business, my income multiplied 8.4 times. I'm like, okay, it's not where I need it, but that's pretty cool. And like talk about like compound effect. If I can keep that going, like that's pretty cool. Like that will grow. So like looking at those kind of things, like, okay, you didn't achieve your goal, but are you still where you started? No.
Yeah.
Like you've made progress. So it's like looking at the progress that you've made towards that goal, that like you're not where you started, you're somebody else, you're somewhere else. So really looking at things like that. And then like I forget to celebrate my accomplishments of like, I started a business. Like I joined an MLM, a network marketing, but I also started my own business with no business degree. Like that's pretty cool. Like I didn't go to business school, which is probably a good thing for me because I don't know what's coming. Like I can just like live in the now and just do the stuff I need to do. I achieved like the top 2% of my company this year by achieving my next rank. And I forget to celebrate that. I'm like, come on, Naomi, like you did this.
Yeah.
Like celebrate that. So I think when we look at success, we've got to redefine it and not let other people define it for us. And even using our own goals to help us define success. It's not just about achieving the goal, but where you are based on where you started. Like, hey, I didn't get 5 out of 5. I got 3 out of 5. Like, come on, let's celebrate. I hit a level that other people haven't hit. Let's celebrate that. So I think I'm learning that success is about celebrating the small things and looking at the progress.
Right. And that is so huge just for confidence and creating that momentum.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, it's easy to kind of get bogged down when you talk about like the goals and stuff also. And man,
Yeah.
I
And it's
didn't
easy
hit
to
this.
compare and be like,
Yeah.
man, they're doing so much better than me. And actually, this was kind of cool. I went to a business conference mastermind the last week of November into December. And like I was really nervous going into it. I'm like, who am I to be in this room? Like I am going to be in this room with people who have multi-million dollar businesses. Like I just got a baby business. Like I have no business being in this room. And then I walk in and I realize almost every single woman I talked to
Uh-huh.
that was there felt the same way, had this
Right.
same anxiety of like, I'm not good enough to be here. And I'm like, the whole point is she's teaching us how to make the money. Like,
Yeah.
we do belong here. It doesn't
Right.
matter whether you just started your business, you've been in business 20 years, you belong here. And everybody has these anxieties
That's
about
huge.
this and about showing up and realizing I was like, oh, actually, like when I talk with more people, I'm actually doing pretty well. Like, I'm actually like moving forward. Like, I actually am successful. Like
Yeah.
I'm not where these multi-million dollar businesses are, but
Uh-huh.
when I look at myself in this group of people, like, okay, I am making progress. I am
Right.
successful. And like I am doing these things and making it work.
You are.
Yeah.
So
So yeah,
celebrate the wins. Celebrate the
yeah,
wins, dog.
celebrate. Yeah, nothing's too small to celebrate.
Yeah.
And I love doing that for my clients
Yeah.
of like, look at what you did. Like,
I know.
celebrate this. I'm better at doing it for them than I am for myself.
Is that crazy? What you talked about embodies the podcast. Just with the whole premise as far as identifying something that you want to do, no matter how it is. I mean, you might come to that burnout point. You might
Mhm.
be in a place where you're just comfortable and you just allow the comfort to prevent you from
Mhm.
taking action on the ideas and dreams that you may
Mhm.
have. Can you just share with the listeners just why it's important just to kind of follow through on your ideas and dreams no matter where you are?
I love that you asked this because purpose has come up in so many different places for me in the last 2 weeks. And we all have a purpose.
Right.
And when you're at a place of hating your job, whether because of burnout or whatnot, even just being kind of, I was talking with a friend about this, even just being kind of neutral about your job, you need to take a step back and look at that and figure out what is it that you hate about your job and are you in the right place? Are you living out your purpose? And so kind of like you said, like what do you look at? What do you love doing? What do you love? And I can tell you, I may not be making a whole lot of money at the moment, but I love what I am doing. Like sitting here talking on this podcast, I love doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. I love speaking. Tomorrow, I will be speaking to a group of teachers about financial stress. I love it. So I know I am on the right track. I am following purpose. God has a purpose for us, and it's not just to get by. It's not just to put in your hours at work. If you hate your job, take a step back and look at, okay, what is my purpose and what do I love? Because God called us to an abundant life. He
Right.
did not call us to just get by. He gave us talents, passions, interests for a reason to use them for him. So what is it you love? Like, and how can you do that in a way that fills your purpose? I love speaking. I love coaching. I love helping people be successful. And I was at a point in my career where I wasn't loving what I was doing. I wasn't. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't loving it like I did originally. And it's okay for your passions and your purpose to change throughout your life. We go through different seasons. Teaching was a season for me. And people are like, so are you ever going to go back to the classroom? Are you going to go back to administration? And I'm like, no, that was for a time. That's not for right now.
Right.
And so you have to be certified to teach in public schools, be an administrator, all of that. I battled with whether or not to keep up my certification. And most people will tell you, always keep it.
Right.
And I was like, no, I need to let it go because it's a crutch for me. It's
Mhm.
it's a it's a back door for me. And I can fairly easily get it back. But I was like, no, I need to let this go because it's a safety net for me to be able to step back and be like, I still have this. I can still easily get back. And I had to let it go. So sometimes we have to let go of those security blankets. Say, no, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
There it is. Never let a face define you, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you. This was fantastic.
Yeah, this was good. I appreciate it. Dr. Naomi Hall. Naomi Hall. Woo.
Thank you so much.
Go. Yeah, I appreciate it. That was good. That was good. Listen, I want to thank Dr. Naomi Hall for coming on the show today. She hit on some powerful, powerful pieces, tips, methods that can actually help us all get to that next level. Man, there were just so many things, from finding identity beyond work, the power of encouragement, recovering from burnout and workplace politics, quiet quitting. How often do people do that? Tracking those blessings and challenges in life provides strength. So what we need to do, adopt practical techniques like she mentioned. What was it, like scribble and scrap, to confront and discard those negative self-talk. What a blessing. I just want to thank you all for watching this video. I'm excited about your growth and your transformation quest to become the person God has created you to be. Hit that newsletter to get updated content and resources that will assist you in your growth, and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you in the next video, and remember, we cannot become what we need if we remain where we are. God bless you all.